Hello and welcome to Miss Clark Reads to You. Today we are in chapter 6 of Rob White's Deathwatch. We are on the bottom of page 73. In the morning, the butte had been a beautiful reddish copper color. The areas where the slabs had broken away looking almost golden. Now, with the sun behind it, the face toward him was a deep dark purple. With his one seeing eye, Ben studied the butte and the desert floor around it. He studied the landmarks of the rain-cut arroyos, mountain peaks, the small mesas, other buttes. The one whose shadow reached out to him was the most majestic of them, and with the sun setting behind it, almost seemed to move toward him as the stone merged with the shadow. Now the sun was completely behind the butte, turning it into a tower of blackness, and then a single brilliant ray of light appeared to come straight through the solid stone of the butte. It lasted only for a moment, and then the stone was solid and black again, and that was all Ben needed to see, and for a second he felt a great triumph, for he knew now where he was going. He turned his head and looked down at Medak. The whole desert was tinged with a soft red glow. Even the white jeep was pink now with Medak, and Medak moving around his camp was a tiny red-tinged man. Darkness came very slowly as Ben sat there waiting, but at last the sunset faded and the moonless sky grew black and the stars began to appear. Ben picked up the slingshot and pouch and pulled himself up. Then he set out, going down the northern flank of the mountains so that Medak could not see him. He had not gone far before doubt began to eat at him. I love that. Doubt ate at him, turning doubt into a person. So he personifies doubt. The pain of the stones against his feet was enormous, breathtaking, and he could never tell when some sharp edge was going to send it shooting through him. But when at last the dark shape of the giant Saguaro lying there on the sand, other young ones standing like dumb, motionless sentinels around it. The going seemed a little easier and the pain a little less. "Oh, little Gila woodpecker," Ben begged, "be here. Like this place. Make your nest here. I need you." He had often wondered angrily how a woodpecker could be so much smarter than a man. The Gila woodpecker knew better than to kill a giant saguaro. The bird, like men, left its mark on the great cactus, but, unlike men, it never killed one. A saguaro 10 years old is no bigger than a baseball. At 21, it's as tall as a man. After 75 years of life in the rugged desert, it will have grown into 12 feet, but it will still be a dwarf among its elders. For after 200 years, when the saguaro is full grown, it towers 50 feet above the desert, a great thorny stalk of growth with strong, upright, praying arms. A man carving his initials in the skin of a saguaro, initials that will probably never be seen again by another man, can cause this giant 200-year-old plant literally to bleed to death. And many men have done just that. The Gila woodpecker, on the other hand, knows when it's safe to nest in a saguaro. It will never injure the plant during the rainy season, for the little bird depends on the saguaro and it will not hurt it. However, when a nest will do no damage, the woodpecker cuts a small round hole through the tough hide of the plant and works its way into the saguaro's pulpy, wet interior. Then the bird hollows out a place for a nest, and the plant soon coats the wall of the nest with a tough, dry, corky plaster, which not only keeps the moisture of the plant from running out and thus killing it, but keeps the nest dry and snug for baby Gila woodpeckers. In an old plant, there will be dozens of these nests, which, when the plant eventually dies, remain looking like dry, somewhat shapeless boots. Aha! So if I was to stop and make a prediction here, I think Ben wants to get into that cactus and get out those old nests and put them around his feet. The moon was coming up when Ben reached the old cactus, now long dead as it lay on its side on the floor of the desert. So the cactus is dead, the one that he finds that he's going to dig the nests out of. Nothing was left of it now except a cylindrical cage of what in the first moonlight looked like long, slim fishing poles. These hollow ribs had once been the pipes for water storage, pumping water almost as fast as it was gathered from the roots, which often spread out for 60 feet around the base of the plants. Now they were bone dry and crackled as he pulled them aside and lifted out one of the woodpecker nests, a tough-skinned, gourd-shaped thing with a hole at one end of it. Sounds like a perfect shoe. So if I was to draw that, let's see, a tough-skinned, gourd-shaped thing with the hole at the end of it. Here's a gourd-shaped thing with a hole at the end of it. Looks like a shoe. So this is a Gila woodpecker nest. And it is inside the saguaro cactus. Ben worked two of them out from among the dried ribs, and first shaking them carefully to get rid of any scorpions that might be in them, he sat down on the sand and put them on his feet. He really is so smart to even know that there might be a scorpion inside that nest. It was a painful process, but once his feet were inside the nest, the pain eased, and when he stood up, he knew that, with just that much protection from the stones, he could go ahead. They would not last long, the corky stuff being brittle and thin, but by walking carefully, picking his way and putting his feet flat down and lifting them up straight, he could move. So he would be walking like this so that he wasn't shuffling his feet like a marching motion. There were 5 more nests, and he got them all, carrying them in his arms as he turned west and began to walk. One by one, the nests wore out as he went on westward, the moonlight full on the desert now, making distance deceiving. Ben passed up the occasional yucca, hoping to see the tall, swab-like flower of a sotol rising 7 or 8 feet above the compact plant. He had almost given up hope of finding one, and now, barefooted again, the last nest worn through, was heading for a yucca, when he saw the swab over to his right, the flower stalk standing straight and motionless, shaped like an oversized bottle brush. So again, this is why I love to draw, because a bottle brush, an oversized bottle brush. So if you know bottle brush, you know, you sort of got this, you know, there's this plant, this yucca plant, and it has these big, huge flowers that come up. Bottle brush. Here's another bottle brush. Okay. So this is the yucca plant. And these are the sotol flowers, I believe. If I'm correct. I'm pretty sure I'm correct. Neither the sotol nor the yucca are cacti. They're the lily family. However, the sotol doesn't have the vicious thorn at the end of its leaves that have given the yucca the name the Spanish bayonet, and the leaves are tougher. It was a good young plant, and Ben went to work with it, tearing off a few of the older leaves, and he sat down with them and stripped them of their outer edges, which were barbed the entire length of the leaf, so they made a sort of double-edged bandsaw blade. The sharp edges gone, he continued to work with the leaf, pulling off half-inch wide strips and laying them in a pile. When he had enough, he took new leaves and tore them into wider bands. These he wove together layer on layer, each layer laced to the others with the thinner strips. When the foot-shaped pad was an inch thick, he wove the thin laces across it and then continued adding layers of the woven leaf. At last he had 2 clumsy sandals, thick-soled and with laces of leaf strips which he tied around his feet and ankles. They were painful to walk in, but not nearly as painful as being barefoot among the stones. So he takes these and he makes some sandals out of this plant to protect his feet from the stones that have been cutting into his feet. Gathering more of the leaves, he strung them together and started out again, carrying the bundle of leaves by a knotted strip. He went on westward toward the butte, the moon now setting, the night far advanced. So what's interesting is from the moment the moon set, the sun set and the moon is now rising and setting, that's how long it's taken him to cross the desert. And he's done a couple activities in the middle too. The Gila woodpecker shoes and now the so tall sandals. Added to the pain of his feet was the increasing pain of thirst. His tongue was very dry and felt as though it had cracked open in places. It filled his entire mouth, a great stiff swollen mass that pressed against his lips. That's good imagery. His tongue was dry and felt as though it had cracked open in places, and it filled his entire mouth, a great stiff swollen mass that pressed against his lips. His throat felt hot and as though coated with dust, and the pain in it came in slow, long-lasting throbs, each one seeming more intense than the one before. In the fading moonlight, the butte seemed as distant as the far mountains, and there was no shadow from it in the desert now. It was still far away, standing silent and somehow sullen in the empty desert. Again, that butte is being personified as it has emotions. Sullen. It's sullen in the empty desert. It looked ominous and black, threatening and forbidding. He had to stop occasionally to replace the thongs, his sandals, which kept breaking, and at each stop he could see that the layer of the woven leaves between his feet and the stones was thinner. He had hoped to have covered more ground in the cool of the night, but as he walked on he knew that he would be lucky to reach the area of Breccia by dawn. At this slow pace, he might even still be walking in the desert, perfectly visible to Medak from this vantage point on the cut terrace. There was nothing to gain but turning back and climbing again now, and there was nothing to gain by turning back and climbing again into the low mountains. He would die there as surely as he would die in the Breccia. There was nothing to do but to go on, not at this slow pace. It took all of his willpower and all of his strength to force himself to start running. He ran awkwardly, the thick, ungainly sandals flopping, the bundle of leaves flapping against him, the slingshot swinging in the moonlight. From the jeep, if Medak was watching, Ben would have been a pitiful thing to see. A naked man running in the moonlight across a savage waste of desert. I really find what's on page 80 to be quite humorous. The imagery that Medak would see and how ridiculous Ben thinks he looks. But this is really about survival. This is about him making his way fast as he can there and not caring about how he looks. The butte calls. I'm going with the personification here. Sticking with that for my title. Oops. No new characters. I'm going to write my last detail. You can fill in at least two other details. Ben runs ridiculously. Can't spell ridiculously. Sorry about that. Towards buttes, Breccia. Hard to write on the whiteboard. Now, what is the mood and the tone? The mood is ominous. The tone, it's a race against time, really. It's a race against time. So a good word, I'll have to think about that. You think about that and you bring that one to me to class when we meet after watching the video. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to reading to you again. Have a wonderful day.